Hello, welcome to Take From It What You Will, where we discuss the events of the day. Going to take a bit of a different tack today. Normally, we discuss things that are based on first primary source documents, first order knowledge of issues. But I think a few things that have occurred today that we have to take a look at the events and draw some inferences from, perhaps, instead of just providing the primary source documents, because in a lot of these cases there just aren't any. Well, what are the facts? The facts, a few things have occurred. I believe we talked earlier about Brexit. Brexit has not been the economic disaster that was predicted, even though you still hear people talking about doom and gloom due to Brexit. But if you actually look at the British pound, it's as stronger than it was 2 weeks prior to the Brexit vote. There are no issues there. There will be no issues. I think what you're seeing is, as we discussed in prior episodes, issues of this, that Europe is becoming more and more dissatisfied with the immigrant plight. Their economies are bad. The issue, I think Alan Greenspan really said it best when he predicted, I think almost 2 decades ago, that this European Union and the economic community, the one currency was not going to work because there was no political follow-up. And that was absolutely right. You cannot just rule it economically. When you only have economic measures that can be taken, you cannot actually control what's going to be happening throughout. So you would need what Churchill wanted, an actual United States of Europe, not a united economy only of Europe. So I think, unfortunately, it's going to fail unless they can come up with this political solution. I think what you're going to see in the near future is Angela Merkel is very unpopular, becoming more and more unpopular. And as you see the Muslim unrest occurring, and it has nothing to do with the religion. It has everything to do with immigrants who are not being assimilated into a society. These poor people have gone from trauma now to a different form of trauma, and there's no assimilation process. It's just this mass movement, and it appears like that's the kind of thing on a smaller scale that's being recommended for the U.S. There has to be an assimilation process, as in all immigration that has occurred in the U.S. that has been successful prior in forming this great nation. There has been an assimilation process into the culture and the citizenry of the U.S., and the same thing has to happen in Western Europe. It's not going to succeed without it. It's great for people to keep their culture, retain their culture. I think most societies have been able to do that, but you also have to recognize that you have to respect and become part of the culture, the community where you are moving, where you're immigrating to. So that being said, we've also had the conventions. The conventions are over. Of course, you see the bump. And we had discussed earlier, I think what you're seeing right now is exactly what we said would happen prior, in that with the Republicans versus the Democrats anyway, and not talking about the Libertarians or the Green Party. We'll mention those in a second. But what you're seeing is, if Donald Trump thought being a billionaire was going to bring him power, and with the Carl Icahns and the like coming in, we knew that was just a faint hope. You want to talk about power, talk about the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation and this worldwide network that the Clintons have working for them. It's not the DNC. They rule the DNC. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was her puppy dog. Believe me, she was just following rules that the Clinton set down. She was just following their bidding. There is no doubt about it. Of course, you're never going to find a direct path to that. However, there is just no doubt in my mind. The Clinton Foundation, the Clintons are out for power. Now, you're going to see some really strange... I shouldn't say you're going to see. I say as the time goes on, we've talked about the likelihood of what could happen between now and the election, and even after the election. I went through, I think, 3 to 5 scenarios here several months ago of what could happen, and the odd thing is, the more bizarre those scenarios is becoming more and more likely as we see the events unfold going into the election. Of course, Donald Trump being the candidate, assuming he stays as the candidate for the Republican Party, and that he doesn't drop out. I think I said earlier, I don't think he's really that interested. I think he's more interested in the process, the game, the notoriety, than actually getting the job. I think he would find it very boring. I'm not a Donald Trump fan. I'm not a Hillary Clinton fan. I'm not a fan of anybody right now. I'm still watching, and I am more concerned about local elections. I'm more concerned about my U.S. representative and my U.S. senators than I am about who gets the presidency. But anyway, getting back and diverging, but the Clintons are so powerful. Look how they're running the networks. You've had all sorts of potential stories on Hillary Clinton. If you just starting with the DNC, the issues with the DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. What was the takeaway from that? It's Trump and the Russians. That's what the media hit on. Nothing. There may be some kind of Russian involvement in election, attempting to bias an election. Well, there's actual fraud that's evident in those emails that the DNC was actually defrauding the elective system. Now, it doesn't matter. I know you can say it's a primary. They can appoint anybody. They can make any candidate they want. That's true. But when they're using U.S. taxpayer resources to carry this out, that's a whole different matter. And that's what they did. Every time they run these, even though it's a primary, those primaries involve spending U.S. taxpayer money to set up those elections. Now, as long as, if that is all going to be reimbursed, I guess that's another thing you could look at. But the whole fact of the issue is the American taxpayers were defrauded by the DNC into thinking that this was an actual election. We paid for it, and the outcome was absolutely preordained. No doubt about it. And it's just odd that the media does not pick up on that. Because, again, it's not odd. We all know why. So you're not seeing, I just don't even watch the media anymore. I just don't watch it. I'll turn on CNN still in the morning just to see, is there any big news? Then it's straight to BBC or to the business network, to a business channel to watch and see what gold's doing. I'm a big investor in gold, as you all should be right now on this side. Anyway, so I think moving forward, what we could see are some of these strange scenarios where if a Donald Trump were to drop out, see what kind of a candidate would the Republicans bring in. You may see somebody like a Gary Johnson becoming more and more important, but Gary Johnson, he was a governor in New Mexico, and is Mr. Weld, who's going to be his VP choice. Their public persona is not very good, so I don't think once people started taking a close look at them, you would see very much happening with them. I like the libertarian concept, a lot of it, not all of it, but I like a lot of it, probably more than most of the other parties. But I don't think if people started taking a close look at Gary Johnson, that you would have someone who would come off as a very likable or electable candidate. That being said, assuming things go forward, I think we're seeing the Obama White House now almost daily attacking Donald Trump and attacking the Republicans. I just don't recall this ever happening in elections before. I just don't recall. So, it just points to the level of support and the level of influence that the Clintons have over government. So we're seeing something else in play here. We're going to see something that with this amalgamation of things that are occurring. You've got the WikiLeaks, you've got Snowden, all claiming that they're going to be releasing some information soon, and depending on how well that's all covered up or shoved under under a rug. We're going to see what could happen. But I think more and more we're building to this climactic event if we have more terrorist activity taking place. That, you know, come something around election time, if things just get so out of whack that you could literally see Obama stay in office. I can just see many ways around that. But I think what you would see is it's going to be a Clinton no matter what. It's going to be Clinton and it's going to be Obama who are going to be the likely winners of all of this and coming out on top, just because they have so much going, there's so much momentum and so much power behind them, so much money. Donald Trump can talk about $5 to $10 billion, whatever it is he's worth. The Clintons are worth hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars, in the potential support they have. Not the Clinton themselves, but with the foundation, with Bill Clinton, and the power they wield. I mean, these people are looking for some kind of a global move here, if I'm not wrong. May not happen now, but you wait and see. This whole conglomeration of people are making a huge power move. And I think what we're seeing is politics in the U.S. are going to change after this. And I think what you're going to see is we're heading a little bit more towards, I don't want to say totalitarianism, but certainly something much more towards a limitation of who is going to be in the driver's seat for America. I think you're going to see some real odd things happening in the coming few years, if not within a few months. and I think what you're going to see is going to kind of blow open the charade of what we've got, and essentially just show us that the U.S. is now a plutocracy. It's been heading that way since probably certainly it's been heading that direction since the 70s, and it's really taken hold since the 90s, since the time of Bill Clinton. I think in the years just before Bill Clinton, you're seeing the plutocracy, and we'd have to go back and look at some of the legislation that's gotten into place, but it's really the play of the large lobby groups, the PACs, the super PACs. These are the people who are directing our country now, and it's all fine and well as long as they leave me alone and don't super tax me, don't restrict my business. Hey, they want to run it. I get back to, I'm more interested. Who's my representative? I don't like my representative. I'm sorry, I'm an independent. I got a guy named Ted Deutsch here who's our representative, who is absolutely unresponsive. He just deals with his crowd. He's a Wasserman Schultz puppy. I've written him several times. I think they wrote back once or twice with really, really minimally acceptable responses saying, well, they can't talk about this, they can't talk about that. I'm sorry. It's one thing we have to start insisting on is forget about the presidency, forget about those. Get your local elected officials responding to you. That's one thing. We have term limits. We got to get people our local representatives representing us. You know, whether they can represent us in Congress is another thing, but they need to be looking after our local interests and after our people. That's really what the government is all about. It's not about the presidency. Don't lose focus of what we really need to have is this powerful legislative branch of the government, one of the three main arms of government. Legislative needs to represent its people, and they know. I think in the past, I've been writing letters to legislators since the 70s, and it's only in the past, since I've come back from overseas, that when I write them, I really don't get acceptable responses. I used to get responses. Maybe they weren't responses I liked, but I got direct, applicable, personalized responses from my representatives and from my congressmen. I don't get that anymore. What I get are form letters. What I get are really poorly written, dismissive responses to my right. That has to change. We have to get our representatives, our senators, all of our congressmen representing us, whether it's state level, federal level. That's the key, I think, to keeping America the way it is, because it's just the plutocracy at the top has just gotten too unwieldy. Excuse me. And it doesn't really do anything on a large scale for us anyway. I mean, for God's sake. Yes, okay, well, let's go ahead and pass a law about greenhouse gases. You know, it's this talisman sort of mentality that if we pass a law, it's going to automatically cure things. Same thing with gun control. Let's pass laws to control all the guns, and then automatically, okay, we've done our job. It's not the way it works. You have to actually get down and get into the dirt. Greenhouse gas emissions and global climate change. What you need to do is get actual scientific community working on these issues and coming up with solutions. I don't care which side you fall on. That's the whole thing. The same thing on gun control. What you have to do is you're going to have to get down to the nitty gritty and provide the tools so that our law enforcement people have the power and have the ability and have the tools they need to be able to take the dangerous groups out, take them off the street, get them get them taken care of, without this wholesale disarming of America or whichever side you're on that. I don't care which side. I have guns. I don't mind registering. But this whole issue is just absolutely ludicrous with the NRA. The NRA needs to get out of this whole thing. What you need to do is to get law enforcement the tools to use the laws that are already there. Excuse me. And this is where maybe I don't agree with some of the libertarians. I think what you see are examples like in Canada, Australia, where you have reasonable gun laws, but you have a federal police force that is in charge. One of the issues in the United States is you have the state and local police forces that are not equipped to be able to handle these kind of things. So you really need to put this in the hands, either equip those forces with their tools that they need, or you bring the federal level into it. That's really going to be the key to this. Well, I'm over my 15 minutes. I just want to say, well, we'll be watching the elections. We'll be watching what's to come. I hope you enjoyed this, and take from it what you will.